My name is Josh Fisher. I'm a PhD student at Georgia Tech, where I'm completing my dissertation work on study on community storytelling through emerging media, specifically looking at augmented, mixed, and virtual reality. So I'm interested on how to create these experiences with multiple users on-site and on location. And this is my wonderful colleague, Gabby.
Hi, everyone. I'm a master's student at Georgia Tech too, and I'm a UX designer. For those who don't know what UX means, it's a user experience, and it stands for that you can do user experience research by interviewing people, and then you leverage the research finding to your later design.
So the presentation we're giving today is really sort of two parts. You're looking at theory and practice and application right here. So while I do a fair amount of programming, design, and development myself, Gabby and I collaborate together on lots of projects. I come to her with theories and ideas, and she tells me why they will or will not work, and then we put it into practice. So what we'll be talking about today is we'll be really starting with theory. We'll be talking about kind of the last 4 years, 5 years of my research into sort of theorizing and deriving design insights for mixed reality and augmented reality. And then we'll kind of give an overview about how to do UX design research for these kinds of experiences, and then leave you with some prototyping tools that you can walk away with today to begin using. And so a big thing that I've noticed in this space is that there's a desire, there's a constant effort among technology folks to always reinvent the wheel. We're always looking to create the new best thing instead of standing on the shoulders of giants. And so what I really want to begin to talk about today is this concept called remediation. So if we could, remediation is, if we go to the next slide, Gabby. Remediation is a concept that talks about how every new medium does something that the previous medium did. So for an example, when we first had the moving images, when we first had movies, we eventually had music added to those movies because we wanted a soundtrack. When we have augmented reality, we have very simple 2D images that go up just like they would go up in a gallery or anywhere else, but they now hang and exist in 3D space. They've been instantiated in that way. So we don't have to go back and think about how this is done, right? We can look at see how gallery owners put up pictures. We can look at see how audio, symphonies, bands, and all these other areas begin to do this kind of work and this kind of entertainment. And so what I particularly look at when I think what mixed reality is a part of, and game mechanics feed into all of this, is I see it as a mixture of documentary, performance, and scenography. That last one might be new to some of you, but that's essentially set design. And the reason why I choose these three is because what documentary, who here is a fan of documentary? Any documentary fans here? Yeah? So every documentary tries to convince you of something, right? Every documentary has an argument, whether it's this person's innocent, whether it's we really need to tackle corruption in government, whatever that might be, each documentary makes a particular argument. And so does augmented and mixed reality. When augmented and mixed reality is on location, when it's in a particular area, a legitimate place, and it creates a space, what it's doing is it's making an argument to the user about how that space and place can be used, in our instances today for gaming. When we talk about performance, for the first time, not necessarily for the first time, but certainly in more of the most mainstream sections, we have our users engaging with our experiences with embodied movement, embodied action. And so performance studies and HCI, human-computer interaction and media studies have had a really tight relationship for a long time, certainly since Brenda Laurel and virtual reality, and I'll talk about that in a second. But when we are thinking about how our users engage with our content, it's helpful to think of them as actors in a space. And really actors in an invisible stage space is being created around them. And so when we're thinking of our designs, we have to consider how do people act in that space. And lastly, scenography. Scenography is the utility or the composition of space. So if I were to look around this space right now, and I wanted to create a mixed reality experience for it, I'd want to use the physicality of this space. I'd want to be able to use the chairs. I'd want to be able to use this god-awful lighting that's above us. I'd want to be able to use maybe even how freezing it is in here right now, although it's probably going to get warmer as this presentation goes on. And so I'm going to talk about each one of these in greater detail now. So we're going to start with documentary here. John Grierson is the father of a UK and Canadian documentary. And when he was first going out and shooting, what he realized is that every documentary, every film, is the creative treatment of an actuality. Now, an actuality isn't reality. I want to repeat that. An actuality isn't reality. What an actuality is, it's a particular perspective on reality, a particular way of thinking about it that comes from the documentarian, in our instances, our designers and developers, but a documentarian, about how they see the world and how they're going to dress that world up. And so if we're thinking about this in terms of our work here today, it's that every single mixed reality experience creates an argument about what that physical reality might become, what it might be for users. And so for us, we have to think, what can make a reality more playful? So I was recently at a party and somebody said, well, augmented reality will be everywhere, right? And I thought, well, that sounds horrible. That sounds awful. Can you imagine being at a family barbecue and then there's just like digital stuff flying through the air while you're trying to eat ribs and chicken wings? Sounds awful. Awful. So we have to find ways to make it playful without taking away from reality. And when constructing that argument, that's part of it. And this is where we begin to use those HCI concepts. Yes. So this is an old picture from Brenda Laurel's Placeholder, and it's a very old virtual reality project, second wave feminist VR. And in this instance, one of the reasons why we turn to performance studies is it helps us to understand how people interact with the imaginary in real space. So there's a whole bunch of performance practices that already use gesture to engage and tell a story. What's the most famous French one? Wears a lot of white makeup. A mime, right? Like a mime is using gesture the entire time in real space to communicate a story. And I actually just had a mime at Georgia Tech who was teaching my students some of these different techniques about how to move in particular ways and how to translate those movements into designs. But there are others as well. We have things like the Promenade play, which is essentially a play in which while you're walking along a promenade or in the park, there are actors along the way who are speaking to you, telling you stories, engaging with you in different ways. And each one of these individuals, each kind of interaction provides new insights for you to use. So again, there's no necessarily need to go back to the beginning. We can look at some practices that already exist. Even folks that are nearby, like blast theory performance groups, who do this kind of situated engagement with individuals and create games on the fly. And lastly, I want to talk about stenography because what we're talking about doing is we're making play spaces. And if we're going to be making play spaces, one of the things we have to realize with mixed reality is that we create these spaces without floors. Now, I know that's kind of a complicated statement, right? But if we take the concept of the Jungle Book and we say that we can't necessarily render through augmented reality an entire jungle, right? Like our phones will blow up. The FOV on the HoloLens is too small to kind of make that really effective. And so one of the things that we have to do, one of the things we have to realize is that when we have Mowgli or Shere Khan going through the space, they're not going through a forest. They're going through an area. And so we need to understand that area and we need to understand that space and use it. So I like to say that we create narratives without floors. Moving walls, certainly, but without floors. And one of the things that you also want to realize is that in mixed reality, most of your interactions at this particular point will be nonverbal. Yes, there are experiences where there are verbal interactions, but many of them will be nonverbal. And so we can think of spaces that generate interactions for users that don't really use anything other than the space. So for example, a labyrinth. We know in a labyrinth, people will seek out the exit. Maybe some users will choose to sit there and starve, but we can expect that they will go and find the exit. And so this is one of the ways that we can use physical space. And one of the most important things is that the space itself can be used for interaction. And so I'm going to shift gears here from this sort of 5,000 foot level to kind of a 2,000 foot level now. I'm still kind of staying high and airy and theoretical, but I'm talking about something called strong concepts. Strong concepts come from the HCI community. They're somewhere between an interaction design pattern and an abstract theoretical idea. They're above a single space of interaction. So we're not talking about a single thing you only do in one game. We're talking about something like the Angry Bird slingshot, which then all of a sudden is everywhere. The swipe right, swipe left, which all of a sudden is everywhere. These start as strong concepts and over time become ubiquitous and legitimized as actual interaction designs. So one of the things that is very clear, obviously, that we work with is computer vision and real-time mapping, right? You have to understand the space and use that space. There's a lot of information you can get now from ARKit 2.0, 1.5 even, as well as the PlaceNote SDK that can help you, for example, texture that space as you create it. We also do optical stenography. So optical stenography, this is set pieces, set designs that we see through the phone, and this is what makes reality playable, right? So if we do not, for example, I saw a very, a sort of a basic AR game the other day that was a shooting AR game. You had to shoot airplanes down that were coming at you, but they made sure that the entire space was covered in clouds and particle effects. And so it used that space and created that atmosphere for me to play in. The next is image and object recognition. And this has really come a long way over the last year and a half, 2 years, especially with ARKit 2.0, and we're using machine learning as well. But not only now, and you've been able to do this in AR for quite some time, not only can you now just recognize an image and load content and have something happen, but now you can actually, you can recognize that image and then you can track that image through space. So that image now becomes a game object. It could become a game marker. It's anything that you can use. And you don't have to use an image anymore, you can use 3D objects. So there, with ARKit 2.0 specifically, you can register an object like a candlestick or a microphone, and then that can become your sword in your role-playing game for MR. And so it's a way of activating the environment around the user as a game environment by changing what we might call the essence of these objects, these mundane objects that you see every day, and making them playful and playable. The other thing that's pretty key, especially for people interested in multiplayer, augmented and mixed reality, is the concepts of location awareness and generative exploration. Location awareness, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but one of the ways that you can use it specifically within the augmented and mixed reality concept is to create what I like to call a foundation of fact. And a foundation of fact means taking API data from the weather, from the phone itself, from the nearby community, from the weather APIs, from whatever kind of data you can get, and feeding that into your experience. The reason why you want to do this is our users come to augmented and mixed reality experiences expecting some aspect of reality. It's not just the floor and the computer vision they want a little bit of it to seep through, back and forth. And so if you have a rainy day outside and you're doing a zombie game, well, those zombies can look wet. There can be a cloud, there could be thunderstorms, and this helps create the flow of the experience back and forth through reality and virtual reality. Generative exploration is sort of an extension of that concept. It's connected to the Promenade theater and the Promenade performance, which is, as we walk through space, things happen to us. Those things can be playful things, right? So how many of you, when you walked in, were heralded by somebody sitting at the front desk asking you to sign in and register? Well, there's no reason that couldn't have been a treasure box or something else. Key to generative exploration, and that being an effective tool, is that everybody sees the same thing. If nobody sees the same thing, we don't feel like we're exploring the same spaces, and that flow is broken. So generative exploration made it up there again, but that's all right. And then we've got fingertip rays. So for our programmers out there, raycasting, this is pretty much the main interaction. Get comfortable with raycasting, play with raycasting. It's really important as a concept. But then also static and dynamic gestures. So the work of Leap Motion, HoloLens, even some of the stuff that has been created for mobile WebXR, for Unity by Mozilla, can start tracking hand movements. And they can also start using feet and leg movements as well. And so you can begin integrating these into your games. I recently saw an ARKit game that was bouncing a soccer ball on the top of your foot. And it was using machine learning to essentially recognize that foot every time, and then was tracking the ball using the physics. And so as we move forward into the practical side of things, I think we all know that sometimes this isn't going to work. And it's heavily dependent upon light in today's world. based on the features that can be detected, the planes that can be detected. The pattern recognition has come a long way, but it's still important. But the reality also is that when you're testing these experiences, when you're doing your mixed reality experiences, you have to do them with real audiences, real users in real world locations and in multiple different locations. Not doing so, not engaging in this kind of way can actually lead to occasionally insults to the community you're playing in. It can lead to play experiences that some people find offensive and people think are not necessarily respectful of that particular space that you're working in or playing in. So it's helpful to be aware. So if you remember, there was a whole bunch of headlines that came out when Pokemon Go took the world by storm about people playing Pokemon Go at the Holocaust Museum or in Arlington Cemetery or all these various places where we wouldn't expect games necessarily to be played at. And so maybe as an individual designer, that's, you kind of want to cross that line, you want to transgress that way and do that kind of work. But you should realize that there's going to be blowback from that because you are inviting people into a space that might be sacred or sanctified in some way or respected in a particular way. And so you should be aware of it. So always, 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 always bring joy to your users when you're enhancing reality. And that's kind of a rule that Gabby and I have, is always be looking to add joy to the space.
As Joshua has presented, you might tell right now that he is a theoretical scientist. And here I'm going to talk about how we actually made it happen. I'm not complaining. So a nutshell about UX research, it includes Affinity Diagram, user journey map, interview, happy path, and competitive analysis and information architecture. I know there are a lot of terminologies that are strange to you right now. And does anybody else actually know what they mean? Okay, I see 2 hands up. Oh, 3. Nice. Okay, and today I would actually dive deeper about Affinity Diagram, interview, and competitive analysis and information architecture, what they mean, and how they make a difference when we design our mixed reality game. So I'm going to start with a question to all of you guys. What real problems are we solving for playfulness in mixed reality? And here I'm going to call out one from you and introduce to all of us what your game is and what kind of problem are you solving. Is there any volunteer? I would take either way, volunteer or victim. No? Oh, cool. Could you please speak louder? So are you collaborating with other stakeholders?
Very cool.
That's very cool, very awesome. Maybe next time I will invite you to come and present to everybody else. Yeah, so, but for most of our game developing, I would argue that we are not actually solving kind of like problems because, well, gaming doesn't come from problems, right? A lot of times, because when you want to, whatever you want to make people feel happier or you will like people to feel relieved after a really long day of work, you are not actually solving a problem that is existing right now. So it's actually the same for our project. invisible cities that we're going to present. But I think the point here is to how to solve the problem during the process. So what kind of problem have you figured out during the user research, okay? And I'm gonna just present and later on. And here, the next step is talking about comparative analysis. So why is your game different than the others? And how you can actually make your game stand out among all the other competitives, right? So first, actually, we have a lot of competitors that are going on and that are really popular because for most of the games, people will just play around the games during their free time. And what people are doing right now, most of their time, is to spend a lot of time. Sorry. Spend a lot of time in other social media. Like, okay, hope it's better. Okay, like Facebook, Instagram, etc. And also, we need to know, for example, in our case, most of our projects are about augmented reality, and you need to know what are the popular augmented reality are, instead of just like social, like normal applications. So Pokemon Go was a blast 2 years ago, right? And there are a lot of others that we should also at least go explore and see why people are using them and what are their advantages, right? Thank you. Okay.
Here, this is there you go. You don't have much room.
And by doing interview, what we really want to know is what kind of problem what we are trying to solve. As I said, a lot of questions didn't come from a problem, a social problem. It might come from a request or just someone, your boss, tell you, oh, we're going to develop this scam right now. You have to do it, right? Like what Joshua has done to me, right? So, so what I have been doing is to go out and ask a lot of people what they have been playing with. So most of the people I've interviewed, I would say more than half of them have told me I would like to play games with others together. And here isn't the end of it's not the ending of the sentence, right? It's a really good time for you to ask a lot of follow-up questions. For example, why do you want to play games with others instead of alone? And what kind of games are you playing right now and why? Or how do you actually play games with others versus you play games alone at home, right? So you would need to dig deeper into the user needs. So what we figured out later on is actually when people say they want to play with games with others together, they really want to have this kind of bonding with their friends or family members. And they would like to feel more engaged in the community. And that makes us happy. It's kind of the ultimate goal of your life. And also, we need to know what kind of technology we need to leverage. There are a lot of options out there. Here's a professor, and most of his research is about HoloLens and mixed reality. And there are a lot of like Oculus or Daydream, the Teal Brush, or the Google Earth, or we have like HTC Vive, right? But what kind of platform, what kind of technology are you going to use, leverage in your own game is really something we should think about instead of, oh, this is awesome, this is super cool, so we're going to develop with it. So for our example, in Invisible Cities, our target users, we need to keep in mind all the time is our target users are just the normal students in Georgia Tech. So what we decided on is actually ditch all of these awesome platforms, right? So because we just can't afford them, they're so expensive. We just can't afford those expensive headsets. Maybe just one laboratory has 1 or 2 headsets, right? And here, I'm going to talk about what actually during the process of user research, what have we done, what methods have we do. So first is Affinity Diagram. Here is actually a close-up of how it works. So instead of like top-down, it's a bottom-up. What we have done is to gather, when doing those interviews or surveys, what we have gathered is from the bottom, For example, the first node, it says, I want to be able to take a picture of something and use it as a texture. And here's what people have told us. And by gathering a lot of like yellow nodes, and what we have done is to categorize what they meant. So blue node says, I want to change my texture of my block. And then after, we have a lot of like similar blue nodes, so it's more about like customizations. It's like the second one is I need added function like undo or remove. And then we categorize what we extract from that is I would like some customization for cube because Invisible Cities is kind of like Minecraft. So it consists of a lot of cubes or elements. We will present later on. And then on the top is actually what we need to implement as our main functionality in our mobile application. So as you can see, those functionalities doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from the user research. It comes from the user requests. It comes from what people meant when, like what requirements they actually have. So next one is information architecture. Because of what we have figured out from the distillation, and information architecture is mostly consisting of all the main functionalities we're going to implement in our mobile application. And you can see a lot of flows. That's when this interface, and after clicking out this button, and we'll go to another one. Just more about logical flow. And one last but not least, how can I know it will be used by more people? Because we don't want to create a really like fabulous game and then nobody use it, right? Then it's just something designed in a vacuum. And you really need to let people to try it out before you can launch it. Or maybe after launching, a lot of people will post a lot of negative comments and they will complain about it and they will tell you. But we will need to actually, go with those comments and make a lot of iterations and make your applications better, right? So what we have done during the process before launching is a cognitive walkthrough. So actually, I see you, John. Hi, this is Dr. Hanneman. It's the program director of our program, Human-Computer Interaction, and John is my alum. And so I have presented our work to the director and asked him what does he think before every click to action button. And what we have figured out from this process is that we will have a lot of recommendations because he has 20-year-old experience in this industry, and we will have a lot of very expert advice from them, right? And second is actually do usability testing. So as you can see from the table, we have a lot of low fidelity interfaces. It's low risky, it's really quick to make. And then we will present to potential target users, and we will ask them what they think about each element in that interface, and do this kind of Wizard of Oz, so like a fake process because it's not actually implemented or designed. And thirdly is called A/B testing. So there are two options, A or B, and we present it randomly to different people. And then we test which one actually makes more sense. So in that case, we can actually know what they really like, and we have evidence about that, and we know how much, one is better than the other.
Okay. All right. So am I on? Okay, yeah. So we're going to move to talking about our examples right now and how we kind of mash these theories and practices together to create two apps. The first app is called Invisible Cities. Do we have any Italo Calvino fans here who read the book? All right. Read books. So Invisible Cities is a project that imagines the world, the city you're in, the space you're in from a multitude of different perspectives. I'm not going to ruin the book for you. It's a fantastic book. Go read it. And so when I was going into my second year at Georgia Tech, even with 2 years there were actually a number of tragedies, issues also with corruption, racism, and various other issues like that. There wasn't a lot of public deliberation about these things in campus. The university responded. It could have responded a little bit better, in my opinion. What I was hoping to do with creating an app was a community storytelling and playful expression app that would allow our students, who are generally engineering students, computer scientists, not necessarily always the most free in their expression because it's a very competitive and stressful atmosphere, to provide a playful way that they can do this. And so we created Invisible Cities. And Invisible Cities, what users can do is they can create various structures, statues, and sculptures with Minecraft blocks, basically. And they can create these structures in world scale AR, so that means that they exist in space at the scale of you, and can engage with them and leave comments and then add on to each other's statues. So let's say a particular student, it's around finals weeks, or I guess midterms is right now actually, so it's around midterm times, the students are really stressed out, so somebody makes a statue of a whole bunch of piles of books. Another student can do a statue of a staircase leading to the top of that pile to sort of simulate, to sort of communicate solidarity. I'm there with you. Yes, this sucks. I wish we didn't have to stay awake until 2 in the morning, but here we are. And so it's one way that we can sort of create this conversation that certainly exists in Facebook groups and subreddits and whatever, but to bring it back to campus, back to the actual location. And so we got a few requests from individuals and sort of various folks. It was funded by a Georgia Tech grant from the Art Center. And what they wanted to create was they wanted something that the entire campus could use, that it would be fun to use, and that people could engage with. So when we were thinking about the idea, the reason why we chose blocks is we assumed that many of our Georgia Tech students had in their youth, the earlier parts of their youth, still played Minecraft and were familiar with that form of block creation. And if not Minecraft, Legos. Legos fans? Still? Yes. Good people. All right. And so what we also wanted to make sure was that it was sustainable. Now, the beautiful thing about doing playful expressions and creative expressions and augmented reality instead of with physical materials is that they can be sustainable. They can exist over time. And so what we've developed as part of this application to make it sustainable is that everything is time-stamped, everything is geo-stamped or geocached. And so over time, you see the statues build up. And you see those statues build up. And in the final vision for what Arts at Tech is going to have, there will be a screen where you'll be able to slide through time and watch that city get built. And that city then reflects the attitudes and expressions of campus that are relatively hidden and invisible for everybody else. And so I think I covered that. Yeah, and they love games and they love technology. And so what we were wondering was, how would the GT students then leverage this emerging technology to play the game? So I'll let Gabby talk about her research here.
Yeah. So after doing the research, my biggest takeaway are for potential users. Firstly, they really love to experience new technology. And for Georgia Tech students, right, we're tech students. We are really into something emerging. And second is that after doing the usability testing, I also know that people really get inspired by others' creations. Whenever they can see others' creations, they feel like, oh, I can maybe do better than him, right? And thirdly is that they feel really excited when they can have the power of editing. So it's actually one of the examples I just showed to you the customization, like when they can actually edit and they can actually change texture or color of a single cube. And what we have leveraged from these 3 findings, big takeaways, are first one is that they can actually build creations freely with enough degrees of freedom and customizability. And secondly is that they can explore other interactions without geological constraints, because a lot of people, they are really looking forward to present to others some creations that have built, but without geological, because say I have created something like 100 meters away from me, but I really want to show you right now. So it will be actually saved in your profile, then you can actually show people. And thirdly is that people can interact with others by something like interactions, what we have done in Facebook all the time, likes or dislikes or thumb down or comments. You can make some comments and you can check in other comments. And for instance, the first one is the building. So as you can see, we have really on the bottom of this interface, we have really clear and simple, just a bottom bar, and you can actually change the texture and color. You can delete the, additional, and you can upload it to the server and make the creation persist there. And the second, the GIF, the video is actually taken by Joshua.
That was fast.
Yeah, that was really fast, and so you can change the texture again, and then you can make it just. So by adding the eyes or nose, and then you can make it persist there, as I said. So we can just go to.
Mm-hmm.
And why is it still loading?
There we go. Okay.
Okay, cool. And in the second part, in the second function, big functionality we have designed is that we will welcome users with a really top-down holistic bird view. So it's it's our campus, and you can have a lot of creations just on the like a Uber map, and then you can check where those creations are. And second, we have on the top right, we have 3 giant buttons, and by clicking at each button, it will change the perspective. And the second interface is where you can actually detect a plan, and you can map the whole campus on the plan. And also, we have a lot of SpongeBobs that we have created, and those SpongeBobs were floating in the air, so you can again have a holistic view without geological constraints, as I said from the user research. And third is actually you can have this third-person view, and the SpongeBob is standing in front of you. It's invisible, but it looks like SpongeBob is having a really nice conversation with our statue of Einstein and next to our tag ring. And regarding the interaction, we actually did a lot of competitive analysis too, like YouTube or Facebook. So what we have done is that we enable every individual to have enough editing power. So we let them to choose the title, and also we have tags available so they can actually categorize their different kinds of creations. And when they search their own creation, they can actually find that tag, or when other people would like to choose different kinds of categories, they can actually look for the tags without just search for those tags. And we have descriptions that for in public, and what people can look at is the next interface is that, again, a lot of thumb down, up, and share. And also one thing we can move on is that for something like content creation, mobile application, one of the main issue is homogeneity. So it means that it's not everyone is that talented. They can create a very fancy creations, but what we don't want is everybody will just upload a single cube or just their selfies, to our servers. We don't want to overwhelm our server with that. So what we have done is to come up with this management level to curate this, what people have been creating in the campus. For our version 1 right now is student leaders. They can actually manipulate this dashboard. They can check what kind of creations have been uploaded, and they can check whether it has been reported, or what if they have uploaded some inappropriate information, or as I said, what if it's not popular at all, it's just a single cube, and that means maybe there is no interaction about it, right? Because people would not thumb up, or even they would not just put any comments on a very normal generic general creation. So this dashboard is to curate that. And next example.
So just to summarize, so what Invisible Cities ended up doing and what we ended up creating, right, is a completely grassroots community mixed reality platform for storytelling. It's completely run by students, developed by students, for students. And it exists for the campus and will now be used for hopefully the next 10 years, if I'm honest. So the next one we're going to be talking about is called Fanboard. Fanboard is a business run by Morgan Drake. Gabby and I both advise/work with Fanboard, so we get to kind of promote them here today and talk about what they do. And so what Fanboard is all about, it's about essentially bringing playful experiences, augmented reality gaming experience to minor league baseball games, sporting events in general. And what this is, and the reason why this exists, is because lots of people like to go to baseball games, lots of people enjoy going to baseball fields, but not a lot of people actually enjoy baseball, if that makes sense. People enjoy, I see some nods. So people enjoy the social aspect of going there, but sometimes you're just going there with your buddy who really, really, really loves baseball, and you just really like beer in the sun, by all means. And so what Morgan realized was that there's an opportunity here to have people play games during this downtime that are connected to the activity on the field, that is connected to the physicality of the space, and is connected to what is happening on the big board, and augments or adds joy to already existing games that are happening there.
Yeah, this one, as Joshua has presented, it's actually not just from pure requests or bots, right? It's actually some problem that we figured out during the process of observation. So also I went to the field, the cool ray field, and I observed people. And when they're just in the stadium, and what would they do if they are not the aesthetic fans, right? Just a quick question: who are aesthetic fans that will call out every strike in the venue? No? See, most of people, or all of them. Yeah. So most of the people are not that aesthetic. And what they would do is that different people have actually different requirements. They have different preferences about what they would do. So first is that we interviewed young generations. What they told us is they really love to go around the venue and to have fun. So what we extracted from that observation is that, well, we can imitate something like a Pokemon Go, because Pokemon Go was a blast and everybody knows it. And it's actually the motivation about Pokemon Go is that you motivate people to explore around. You can go around the venue, right? And children really love it, by the way. And secondly is that we interviewed a lot of dads. So they told us, I don't need to do anything else. I just need to grab a cup of beer and I can sit there all the afternoon or all the night. What we have, well, right now you might think, there's nothing that we can do because we're exploring some games for them and they just don't go around. What should we do, right? But here is a really key word, it's beer. So what they can't be lacking of is something they can drink, they can have during the process. And thirdly is that we ask a lot of, girls or moms, what they love is to shop. They need to go grab some beer for the dads. They need to buy some food for the children. Or the girls, they really love to go to some souvenir shops. They can buy a hat or a t-shirt, right? So what we have figured out during the process is that firstly, we will need to bring joy to the existing place or the activity. And secondly is that we will use the affordance of physical reality. And thirdly is that we will reward those fans with existing resources like food or souvenirs. What we have done later, first is we have designed this chopper chase. So it's a mascot chasing, and it's actually leveraged from a traditional game. So you will chopper the mascots around the venue, right? So it's augmented reality, and you will need to detect where those creations are before you can actually find them, and you will detect a plan or something, and then this mascot will stand in front of you, and you can interact with him by swinging a baseball, right? And second is rewards. So what we have designed in this part is that we can actually on the left screen is we can actually find what kind of rewards we have gathered. It should be like some food. It should be chicken fillet, and we're collaborating with chicken fillet right now, so we can afford some free food for them. And there are also one part so the later part is ongoing. So we will show to the users what you can get. And because we can't just give away free food all the time, like every time you go to a venue. So what we have been doing is to motivate people to come again and again. So it means that we will just give away like 1/4 or 1/3 or just half of a burger one time. So in that case, we will motivate people to come to the venue, because one thing about this kind of just in the in the place, in the venue, mobile application, one problem is that people will actually feel that not that engaged when they are out of the venue. So what we have been exploring right now is to enable people to have some rewards even at home. So they can play some games even when they're just resting on the sofa, and they can actually get some rewards, but it's not gonna be one whole present. So they have to come to the venue. They have to come to buy a ticket and to the venue, and then it's kind of like an iteration and really like circle about that. And the next interface I've shown is kind of iteration, because you can't just design one interface and then that's it. So there are a lot of iterations going on during the design process. What I have done for the second screen, you can see the difference is that I moved the search bar on the top of the header, and that can save me some white space. And also, I add an avatar on the top left so that we can actually give people this sense of identity. So they can know, oh, this app is just for me, and that rewards are just from me. So this is kind of like, it's different, like a sense of achievement or something that we also need to pay attention when designing. And the next one is dashboard. So what we have been doing is to build this dashboard and build the API from this dashboard to the mobile. What we have been doing on the top is add a sponsor, and we're collaborating with Chicken Flight right now, and we're exploring more collaborations. So what we can do right now is to choose the sponsor, and then second is that you can actually add the coupon, or you can add actually what the price is by taking a picture or scan the QR code. And then the third part is where you can actually pin the mascots on the map around the venue, so let them show wherever you want. So this is being manipulated by the GM of the collaborate field right now. And here I'm going to talk about some prototyping tools, and I believe that everyone here is expert. Maybe actually you are greater than me. So what I would like to shed some light on is, besides Unity or what are the other development tools? Unreal, yeah. You see, I'm not an expert at all. So besides that, what we can actually leverage before we actually move the assets, before we actually make those UI elements in Unity. So first one is called low fidelity, and what we have been doing in the tool is called balsamic, and you can see on the right is all of like. It looks like hand sketch, but it's not. And what we have done with this is that we can actually, especially in the brainstorming session, we can come out of a lot of different explorations, different design ideas, and it's low risky. It's very quick, and then we can present those ideas to different people, to different potential users, and to see which one might be better, might worth our time to actually add these bells and whistles to make it to the high fidelity. And speaking of high fidelity, what we have been doing mostly is Sketch. But the problem with Sketch is that it's not really very, real-time collaboration friendly, and it's only Mac compatible. So there is another alternative for you. It's called Figma. Figma is where you can actually, share with people your design ideas real time. And also it's cross-platform, so it can come from Windows too. And third is called interactive prototype. It's more about like fake interactions. It's not actually implemented. It's like for InVision, you just choose one area, and then you can choose next step or next screen. So it's really easy to use. And also we have other options too. It's called Principle, which is better in micro interactions. And Framer.js for people who have front-end developing experience, Framer.js may be the perfect tool for you. So here is a like holistic view of how they actually have been used in this field. So the X coordinate is fidelity. It's from low fidelity to high. So as you can see, Balsamic is the most left one, and we have InVision, Sketch, Principle, Frame.js, and the Y coordinate is the speed. It means the learning curve for you. So, the higher the speed, it means you can actually handle that very quickly. So balsamic vision is really, really prevalent, not only in our school, but also in the industry, because a lot of people, they will just like put maybe 10 minutes or 12 minutes and they know what is going on. And
Oops, sorry.
yeah, that's mostly about that.
All right, so we're coming to the end of our time here, so I just wanted to leave you all with some really clear takeaways, since we did sort of talk up here with theory and then down here with design work and everything in the middle. So first is, don't reinvent the wheel. Stand on the shoulder of giants. Look what's already out there. Use the SDKs, explore the GitHubs, but also look back at existing behaviors and practices related to media and how these things work. Documentary methodologies, performance methodologies, scenography, all have really, really, really important things to help us in our designs. So just as an example, one of the things that scenographers rely on all the time in theater is a spotlight to direct attention, right? We do the same thing in games. It's the way that we can kind of look to the back to design, look to the past to design for the future. Second, utilize those APIs to get that foundation of fact to create the flow between your digital experiences and the reality that exists around the user. It'll make your worlds and games more vibrant to those users. 3, respect reality. We often don't think about reality when we create our games, but we really need to. We need to be more aware of that. Experiment with strong concepts and push your imagination. We are in an emerging field. This is the time for play. The first movies that were created are not that wonderful to watch now. So fail and fail again and keep making beautiful, beautiful risks. Do this comprehensive UX design research that Gabby's taking you through. Remember to do it with your actual users on location, on site, with low and high fidelity prototypes. Otherwise, you're going to be spending a lot of time coding something that you don't necessarily know will work the way you expect it to through behavior once it launches. 6, experiment with all those prototyping tools and do it with the multiple audiences. And 7, and really the most important one, always bring joy to reality. There's too much sadness. Bring joy. So any questions? Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Yes?
I was wondering what kind of SDKs you're using for your location-based games. Are they still using Mapbox SDK with some success and the Google API, of course? Which do you guys usually prefer as far as latency and real time?
So Mapbox API, I love it. I've been beginning to play with the Unity Map Go, I believe. They have their own. And the reason I like that is because they have a lot of 3D meshes for buildings. It's not for every city or every location, though. And so that's a drawback. But Mapbox API, especially with their AR kit integrations, has been really helpful for development. Yeah. Okay, I have strong feelings about this. So, I think a few things. One is there are various platforms and solutions that are being put forward by the crypto and blockchain community right now about purchasing digital space and digital real estate. I think that's a really interesting idea, but there's no legal backing for that whatsoever. Brian Wassam has a great book called Law, Ethics, and Privacy with Augmented Reality, where he talks a little bit about how the innovation and sort of the technology of Silicon Valley really hits with legislatures and laws which are usually sometimes a decade behind. So most recently, for example, there was a court case up in Milwaukee about whether or not an augmented reality game could be played at the public park there, whether that was an expression of free speech or not. So the game developers won. It was seen as an expression of free speech. But some of these questions really have to be answered before we can, and these structures have to be put in place before, for example, we have digital real estate realtors selling you the corner of the CMI building, which is an awesome building, for how many Ethereum or whatever it's going to be. That being said, I think there's an opportunity for a multiplicity or a plurality of realities or actualities existing in the same space that will be able to be accessed via blockchain technology or through cryptocurrencies. So for example, one park might look a particular way to one user, but another user may pay 20 Ethereum or whatever, and for that user there are different games they can play in that park that are only available to them. I think that when we think about how these technologies will change our spaces, look at the behaviors that are already existing in those spaces and just enhance them, because the technology is not going to change the behavior, it's just going to expand it. Okay. Is that it? Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, so I'm gonna, Gabby, you want to talk about that, or?
Yeah, we have actually received a lot of requests from the baseball teams, because what they really want to do is actually transfer them to more fans that can feel more engaged. So what we are exploring right now is to publish more information about the team players during the game. So that will make people keep informed of their information, right? And also because like we can also have individual requests to say take a photo after with a player, with especially one person after the game. So it's on the way.
Yeah, so one thing specifically with the baseball one we've been really mindful of is that augmented reality experiences that they're currently designed as like single temporal units. So you play the game, you close the app, it's done. So we've been looking at ways to sort of begin with augmented reality, have the augmented reality experience take you through the game, and then have you leave with something. So augmented reality experience designed in 3 acts. And that third act is sort of this review to help you build connections by information and stories about the players once you get home. So when you get home, you can say, oh, what's his face did a great ball thing. Clearly, I'm not the baseball fan. Clearly. And so that's one of the ways that we've been thinking about sort of creating that holistic process. Yeah.
As part of your research, I like the whole idea of the previous media, and this is a little more recent, but have you looked at geocaching and alternate reality games as your basis?
Yeah. So like I love thinking of Beast, like the amazing, ubiquitous, persuasive game, and that's exactly where I'm getting the idea for like the foundation of fact stuff. So the more kind of media devices you can touch and the more data you can bring into the augmented reality experience, and then key to Beast and all of those games is also that shared thing. So you and I have to have the same email or the same information so that I can turn you, like, did you see this? What? You know? And then in addition, though, what's also kind of fun that actually kind of goes to the next level is people getting the same email, but with conflicting information in it. Because as soon as you can get 2 of your users to disagree with one another about what the end goal might be or what the solution might be, then you build a community of practice and a community of collaboration around figuring out what that solution is. And that's exactly how that mixed reality truly expands. Yeah.
We're running out of time.
Anything else? Yeah, we're going time.
Well,
All right.
okay.
Well, thank you very much, y'all.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.